Most people wonder what others will say when they're gone. But I'm one of the few who actually got to find out. My name is Harold. I'm 79 years old. And 3 months ago, I was declared dead for 11 minutes after a massive heart attack during a routine medical. At that time, hospital called my family to tell them I was gone.
And in their grief, they started recording voicemails, asking people to leave memories for my funeral. But then I woke up, and a week later, my daughter accidentally played those recordings for me in my hospital room. I heard what people really thought of me, and it wasn't what I expected, and I need to tell you how I got here. Because the man they were eulogizing wasn't the man I thought I'd been my whole life.
I grew up in rural Iowa in the 1950s. My father was a farmer, hard-working, silent, stoic. He never told me he loved me, never hugged me. But he worked himself to exhaustion every day to feed us, and I respected him for it. I learned early that being a man meant providing. It meant working hard. It meant keeping your emotions to yourself and doing what needed to be done. That's the model I followed my entire life. I married my wife, Dorothy, in 1967. I was 22, fresh out of a state college with a business degree. She was 20, sweet and optimistic, the kind of woman who saw the best in everyone. We moved to Des Moines, where I got a job at an insurance company. I worked my way up over the next 40 years. I became a regional manager. I made good money. I bought us a house in the suburbs. I provided for my family. That's what mattered to me. We had 3 children. Susan was born in 1969. Michael came in 1972. And our youngest, Jennifer, was born in 1976. I love my kids. I want to be clear about that. I love them, but I didn't know how to show it the way Dorothy did. She was warm, affectionate, always available for them. I was the one who worked late, who brought home the paycheck, who made sure the bills were paid and the college funds were growing. I thought that was enough. I thought that's what a father was supposed to do. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't absent in the dramatic way some fathers are. I came home for dinner most nights. I went to some of the kids' events when work allowed. I helped with homework when I had time. But I was distant. I see that now. I didn't play with them much. I didn't ask about their feelings. When they came to me with problems, I'd tell them what to do rather than listening to what they needed. I thought I was teaching them to be strong, to be self-sufficient. I thought I was preparing them for the real world. Dorothy tried to tell me over the years. She'd say, "The kids need more from you than money, Harold. They need you." I'd get defensive. I'd say I was doing my best, that I was working hard for them, that they'd understand when they were older, and she'd sigh and let it go, because what else could she do? I was convinced I was right. The truth is, I measured my worth by my productivity, by how much I accomplished, by how well I provided, and anything that didn't contribute to those goals felt like a waste of time. Playing with the kids, that was Dorothy's job. Listening to them talk about their day, that could wait until I'd finished my work. Going to every soccer game or school play, unrealistic. I had responsibilities. I retired in 2007 at 62. I'd worked for 40 years. I'd saved well. Dorothy and I were comfortable. I thought retirement would be this great reward, this time to finally relax and enjoy life. But I didn't know what to do with myself. I'd spent my entire adult life working, and suddenly I had all this time and no purpose. I tried to stay busy. I did projects around the house. I played golf. I read the newspaper cover to cover every morning, but I felt lost. And my relationships with my kids didn't improve. They were adults by then, with their own lives, their own families. Susan lived 3 hours away. Michael had moved to Colorado. Jennifer was nearby, but she was busy with her career and her 2 young children. They'd call on holidays. They'd visit a few times a year, but there was this distance between us, this formality, like we were relatives who cared about each other in theory, but didn't really know each other. I told myself that was normal. I told myself that's what happens when kids grow up and move on. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. I knew they were keeping me at arm's length. I just didn't know why. Or maybe I didn't want to know why. Dorothy got sick 2 years ago. Breast cancer. It came back after being in remission for a decade. This time it was aggressive. She fought for 18 months, and I was with her every step of the way. I took her to appointments. I sat with her during chemo. I held her hand when she was too weak to get out of bed. And in those final months, she was the one comforting me. She'd say, "Harold, I need you to promise me something. After I'm gone, I need you to reach out to the kids, really reach out. Don't just call them on holidays. Ask them about their lives. Tell them you love them. Please." I promised her I would, and I meant it. But after she died, I didn't know how. I didn't know how to bridge that gap. I'd call Susan or Michael or Jennifer, and the conversations would be stilted, surface level. "How are you?" "Fine, Dad, how are you?" "I'm fine. How's work?" "It's good." And then silence. I didn't know what else to say. I didn't know how to be vulnerable, how to admit I was lonely, how to ask them to let me into their lives. So I just kept going. I lived alone in the house Dorothy and I had shared for 50 years. I went to the grocery store. I watched TV. I did the crossword puzzle. I existed. And I told myself this was fine, that this was just what life was like when you got old. And then, 3 months ago, I went in for a routine cardiac screening. I'd been having some chest pain, nothing dramatic, but my doctor wanted to check it out. They did an angiogram, and something went wrong. My heart stopped. I don't remember any of it. No white light, no tunnel, no out-of-body experience. One moment I was lying on the table, and the next I was waking up in a hospital bed with doctors and nurses hovering over me. But in between, I'd been dead. 11 minutes. And in that 11 minutes, the hospital had made a terrible mistake. They'd called Dorothy's phone, which Jennifer had kept active. Jennifer answered, and they told her I was gone, that they'd tried everything, but they couldn't save me. Jennifer called Susan and Michael. They called extended family, close friends. Everyone started making plans, making arrangements, grieving. And my daughter, in her grief, did something that seemed right at the time. She set up a voicemail where people could leave messages, memories, things they wanted to say. She was going to compile them and play them at my funeral. But then, 11 minutes after my heart stopped, it started again. The doctors got me back. I was alive. Disoriented, weak, but alive. And once I was stable, Jennifer had to call everyone back and tell them there'd been a mistake, that I was okay, that there wouldn't be a funeral after all. I spent a week in the hospital recovering. The doctors said I was lucky. They said most people don't come back from that. I should consider it a second chance. Jennifer visited me every day. She brought me books, sat with me, made sure I was comfortable. On the 5th day, she was scrolling through her phone, trying to distract herself, and she accidentally opened the voicemail account she'd set up, the one where people had left messages for my funeral. She froze. She looked at me. She said, "Dad, I'm so sorry. I forgot this was still here. I should delete it." But I was curious. I said, "What is it?" She hesitated. Then she told me. People had left messages, dozens of them, things they wanted to say at my funeral. She said she'd been planning to play them during the service, as a tribute. I asked if I could hear them. She said, "Dad, I don't think that's a good idea." But I insisted. I said I wanted to know what people would have said. So she handed me her phone, and I started listening. The first message was from my brother Tom. We'd never been particularly close, but we'd stayed in touch over the years. He said, "Harold was a good man. He worked hard his whole life. He provided for his family. He was dependable. I respected him. It was nice, cordial, exactly what I expected." The second message was from an old colleague, someone I'd worked with for 20 years. He said similar things: hardworking, reliable, professional. It was fine, a little generic, but fine. But then I got to the third message. It was from Susan, my oldest daughter. She started by saying she loved me, that she wanted that to be clear. But then she said, "I don't know how to talk about my dad without being honest. He was a good provider. He made sure we had everything we needed materially. But he was never really there, not emotionally. I don't think I ever had a real conversation with him. I don't think he ever asked me how I was feeling, not in a way that suggested he actually wanted to know. When I was going through my divorce 5 years ago, I called him because I needed support, and he told me to hire a good lawyer and move on. That was it. No, I'm sorry you're hurting. No, what can I do to help? Just practical advice. And I know he meant well. I know he thought that's what I needed. But what I needed was my dad. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking. Jennifer was watching me, her face full of concern. She said, "Dad, you don't have to listen to the rest." But I did. I needed to. The next message was from Michael, my son. He said, "I spent my whole childhood trying to get my dad's approval. I played sports because I thought it would make him proud. I went into business school because that's what he valued. I worked at a corporate job I hated for 10 years because I thought that's what success looked like to him. And he never once told me he was proud of me. Not once. When I finally quit that job and started my own company, doing something I actually cared about, I called to tell him. And he asked how much I'd be making. When I told him I'd be taking a pay cut at first, he said it sounded risky. That was his response. And I gave up. I realized I was never going to be enough for him. So I stopped trying. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I wanted to stop listening, but I couldn't. The next several messages were from friends, neighbors, people I'd known casually. They were polite, kind, but distant. Harold was a nice man. He kept to himself. He was always polite. No one said I'd changed their life. No one said they'd miss me. It was like I'd existed on the periphery of everyone's life, never really connecting with anyone. And then I got to Jennifer's message. My youngest, the one who'd been sitting with me in the hospital every day. She said, "My dad is the hardest person I've ever tried to love. And I do love him, but he's never made it easy. When my mom was dying, he was there physically, but he didn't talk about what he was feeling. He didn't cry, at least not in front of us. He didn't let us in. And after she died, I tried so hard to be there for him. I called him every week. I invited him to family dinners. I brought the kids to visit. But every conversation felt like pulling teeth. He'd ask how I was, I'd tell him. And then there'd be this silence. Like he didn't know what to say. Like he didn't care enough to ask follow-up questions. And I know that's not fair. I know he does care. But he's never learned how to show it. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of trying to have a relationship with someone who won't meet me halfway. I stopped the recording and handed the phone back to Jennifer. I couldn't listen anymore. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, looking at me with this mix of sadness and guilt. I said, "Is that really how you feel?" And she started crying. She said, "Dad, I didn't mean for you to hear that. That was for after." I said, "But is it true?" She nodded. "Yeah, it's true." We sat in silence for a long time, and then I asked her to leave. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. I was devastated. I just needed to be alone. After she left, I lay in that hospital bed and thought about my life. Really thought about it. I thought about all the years I'd spent working, providing, doing what I thought I was supposed to do. And I realized that I'd built a life where people respected me, but no one really knew me. No one felt close to me. My own children, the people I loved most in the world, felt like they had to pull teeth to have a conversation with me. I'd spent 79 years being a good provider and a terrible father, and I hadn't even realized it. I called Jennifer the next day and asked her to come back. When she arrived, I told her I was sorry. I told her I didn't know I'd made her feel that way, but now that I did, I wanted to change. I asked her to help me. I asked her to teach me how to be the father she needed, even though it was almost 80 years too late. She cried again, but this time she hugged me, and she said she'd try. Over the next few weeks, I started reaching out to my kids, really reaching out. I called Susan and told her I was sorry about how I handled her divorce. I told her I should have been there for her emotionally, not just logistically. I asked her if she'd be willing to tell me how she was really doing now. She was quiet for a long time. Then she started talking, really talking, and I listened. I didn't offer advice. I didn't try to fix anything. I just listened. And at the end of the call, she said, "Thanks, Dad. That actually helped." I called Michael and told him I was proud of him, that I should have said it years ago, that I was sorry for making him feel like he had to earn my approval. He didn't say much, but I could hear the emotion in his voice when he said, "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." And I started seeing Jennifer more. Not just quick visits, real time. I'd ask about her kids, about her work, about how she was handling everything. And I'd tell her about my day, about what I was feeling, about how lonely I'd been since Dorothy died. And slowly, carefully, we started building something real. I'm not going to tell you it's been easy. I'm 79 years old. I've spent my entire life keeping my emotions to myself, measuring my worth by what I accomplish rather than who I am. Changing that doesn't happen overnight. But I'm trying. Every day I'm trying. Here's what I learned from attending my own funeral. You don't get to decide how people remember you based on what you intended. You get remembered for what you actually did. I intended to be a good father. I intended to show my love by working hard and providing for my family. But what my kids experienced was a dad who was emotionally unavailable, who didn't ask questions, who didn't make them feel seen. And the gap between my intentions and their experience, That's on me, because love isn't just what you feel. It's what you do. It's how you show up. It's whether the people you love feel loved. I thought I'd done everything right. I worked hard. I provided. I stayed married. I didn't drink, didn't cheat, didn't abandon my family. But I realize now that just not being a bad father doesn't make you a good one. Being present physically doesn't mean you're present emotionally. And providing for someone's material needs doesn't mean you're meeting their emotional ones. If you have people in your life who matter to you, don't wait until you're almost dead to figure out how they actually feel about you. Ask them. Really ask them. And when they tell you, don't get defensive. Don't explain why you did what you did. Just listen. And then ask yourself if the person you think you are matches the person they're experiencing. Because I spent 79 years thinking I was a good man, a good husband, a good father. And I was, in some ways. But I was also emotionally distant. I was unavailable. I made the people I loved feel like they weren't worth my time or attention. And I didn't even realize it until I heard them say it to a room full of people at my funeral. I got a second chance. Most people don't. Most people die without ever knowing how they'll be remembered, and maybe that's a mercy. But for me, hearing those messages was the greatest gift I could have received, because it gave me time. Time to change. Time to try to be the father my kids needed. Time to build real relationships instead of transactional ones. I'm 79 years old. I attended my own funeral, and what I heard broke my heart. But it also gave me a chance to put the pieces back together in a way that actually matters. Don't wait until you're gone to find out what people really think of you. Ask them now, while there's still time to do something about it.